Well, it's good to be with you this morning. My name is Dan Cox, and I work in the Public Relations Department of Cherokee Home for Children. And we're really glad to be here today. We enjoy seeing our congregations out in the field, and we are really happy to be a part of your assembly. And we want to tell you some things about Cherokee Home for Children. My wife is the Director of Social Services, which means she takes care of the legal aspects of the kids and does the screening, things like that before the kids come in. She's one of the two people that normally do that. Right now we have only one social worker, but when there are two of them, she's in charge of the girls. She's the first female social worker we ever had at Cherokee Home for Children, and it's kind of a joke that in the 50 some odd years, 53 or 4 years we've been in business, it only took them 50 to figure out that boys and girls were different. And but the boys come down the hall to talk to the back when we had our boys social worker. They would come down the hall and talk to the boys social worker. They'd come in, and in a few minutes they'd be gone. Girls line up. They come sit in Esther's big pink couch and eat pink M&Ms and talk about their day. And girls talk about days more than boys do. Boys just go, "It's okay." And that's pretty much the end of the discussion. This is what you would see if you came down to Cherokee Home for Children, driving down Highway 16. On behalf of the kids there at Cherokee Home, we'd like to thank you for inviting us, because we really do like the opportunity to come and speak to you about kids that are at risk. And be kids that are truly orphaned. We have kids who are orphaned of love. We have kids who are orphaned of supervision. We have kids who are orphaned of respect for authority. And so those things all play into effect when you talk about kids that are at risk. I've made you a road sign so you could find us if you ever get down in that area. We're not quite, maybe not that bad, but this may be a little bit more accurate. We are about 210 miles southwest of Dallas. If you've ever been to Fredericksburg, we're just 57 miles straight up Highway 16 down through the hill country. We are at the northern top edge of the hill country. The bluebonnets are just starting to come out. You can count them still on one hand between Cherokee and Llano. But when it's good, it looks like that or like that. We're hoping this year that it's going to look that way. Last year, you could have put all of the bluebonnets in all of North Texas in one vase. Wasn't very many of them, and y'all suffered from the same drought that we did. We are licensed to keep kids technically 2 to 17. They're still in school. We can keep them to 18 or even 19 as long as they are in high school. Most of our kids are privately placed, and that means that an aunt, an uncle, grandmother, mom or dad comes and says, we need help. Can you help us with these kids? A lot of churches recommend us to people in their service area to come. But we do have a very small percentage that are placed by the state. That probably will go up a little bit because the state is redoing all of their foster care system. They're doing away with a lot of, because of budget cuts, doing away with a lot of foster homes, and they're going to need homes for these kids to go. The downside of that is there are a few, not a lot, but a few more regulations than the other way. The upside is you get kids that are totally unaware that churches of Christ exist, and they come in with a blank tablet for the most part. We're able to deal with that. A lot of people think that we are dealing with Native American children because the name is Cherokee. Actually, we're named after the creek in the community that's just 2 short miles away from our house. We're not very innovative in that part of the country. We seem to name everything the same thing. We began, though, as the Brotherhood's first children's home for Spanish-speaking kids. And for a long time, that's all that was at Cherokee Home were kids who Spanish was their first language. However, in 1973, that changed, and now we have kids of varied ethnic backgrounds. For example, these 5 kids right here, the girl in the far end is African American. She's from Waco. But the next girl is Honduran. The boy in the middle is Cambodian. The boy next to him is Colombian. And the boy next to him was born in Russia. And so you could say we're kind of an international sort of thing. Since 1973, we have been under the oversight of the elders of the Austin Avenue congregation. We began under the oversight of the Cherokee Church because they had a preacher who was involved in Spanish-speaking missions. They took on the work in 1958, but the job became too big and the congregation became too small. So that the Austin Avenue Church took on the work. Our board of directors comes directly from that congregation, and that board of directors is directly under the oversight of the elders at Austin Avenue. One of the reasons why we support children's homes as Churches of Christ is a monetary reason, if not for the spiritual reason. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it costs about $110 a day, or about $40,000 a year, to provide all the services that a kid needs in residential children's care. However, if they go into the juvenile system, if they're get in trouble with the law, if they get in under the CPS system or other areas, it costs $98,000 a year to administer that. And so one of the reasons that we do this is because it is tremendous saving on society to have kids come out that are not on the street, I guess is the best way to put that. Also, if you look at the difference between someone who comes up in residential care and someone who comes up through the juvenile system, the crime rate just plummets when they go to a residential system, and there's lots of reasons for that. We'll talk about that. There are a few changes that are going on our campus right now. We just purchased that block of land right there. It's about 30 acres, because everything that's here at the children's home that doesn't have a building on it is in the floodplain. We have a creek that runs right through there. And we added this because it is truly our feeling there's going to be a lot more kids that are going to need a place to stay in the coming months. We also have a new web address, CHC for Kids, and you can do .com or .org. Either one will get them to you. We like that because our mission is that we are for kids. We also have an online system so that if someone wants to make a private donation, you can do so online. This is our new logo. We like it because it talks about big people helping little people, and we worked hard on that because we love kids, and that pretty much says the story right there. June 2011, we had our 11th director appointed to Cherokee Home. His name is Delton McGuire. He worked for us about 8 years before he became director. The director prior to him had been with us about 15 years, and he died in an accident at the children's home playing in a basketball game with a bunch of college kids. All of our kids were there. His family was there. Grandkids were there, and he fell and hit his head, and it was a 1 in a million sort of thing, and he passed away a week later. And so Delton is now in charge of our entire home. Let me give you a quick tour of the facility. This is our administration building where all the paperwork goes on. And this is our library and staff meeting room. We have our devotionals there 3 times a week with our house parents. We have a gym, an enclosed gym, and it's called a multi-purpose building because we eat a lot of times in there and do other things. There also is what we call the upper room. It's kind of a coffee house. One of our employees used to work in one of those coffee places where you get the $4 cup of coffee. And we make those on Sunday nights, and the kids can invite kids from town to come and try to be like regular kids and have friends over. And we make the cappuccinos and the frappuccinos and the Irish cream sodas and all of that sort of stuff that you'd pay $4 a piece for. This is our rec center. We have games and a TV room and a video game setup in there, and some really cool 70s vintage arcade games like Pac-Man. So if you want to play Pac-Man, you don't know where to go. You come down there, we'll start us a Pac-Man tournament. We also have 4-H pens for our kids. Mostly our kids raise hogs. Sometimes we do goats, but we have a really good house dad who is a pig wrangler, and so we like to raise pigs. We have a shop and hospitality house. We work on some of our equipment, and then we have a place for people to come and stay when they come to see their kids or their grandkids, or maybe other visitors like youth groups that come to work in the summer. We have a food pantry. It's kind of like a small convenience store where we go get food. When we told our son, who is 14 now, he was 11 when we went, we said we're going to go look at Cherokee Home for Children as a job, and he goes, I don't want to go. We said, do you have a rec center? He said, I want to go. So they have a gym. Don't want to go. Said, lots of pretty trees and flowers. Don't want to go. They have a pantry. We can go get food out of it. Says, does it cost anything? Well, not technically. He goes, I think I'll go. And so it was, for some reason, it was the deciding thing for him. This is our pavilion where we have activities. We have Cherokee Day coming up May the 5th. First Saturday in May, and we would serve you barbecue and chicken if you'd like to come down and tour the facility and hear a small program about Cherokee Home. Let us tell you what all is going on there. Every first Saturday in the month of May, this year, May 5th. This is our playground and tennis courts. We have an RV park. If you're coming to the Hill Country and you would like to have a base camp somewhere, feel free to call us. If we don't have the spaces full, you're more than welcome to stay there. It's full hookups. But our mission is to take care of kids who are at risk, and that can mean a wide myriad of things. There are kids that are in trouble. There are kids who need a clean bed to sleep in. We had some kids come in yesterday, and they said, "This is my room?" We said, "Yeah." He said, "How many people's in here?" "Well, it's one of the kids. He sleeps in that bed right over there." "Is this our bathroom?" "Yeah." "Just the two of us?" "Yeah." "Pretty good deal," he said. James 1:27 says, "Religion that God the Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after the orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep yourself from becoming polluted from the world." And one of the ways to keep from that pollution, I think that's not a mistake to put those two together, one of the ways to keep out of trouble is to be helping somebody else. Three universal issues in Christian child care: physical needs, social needs, and spiritual needs. Physical needs, food, clothing, and shelter. Social needs, education, respect, structure, acceptance. And spiritual needs, the Bible knowledge and what to do with it. Mentioned Cherokee Day. There's some of our kids helping. We have some. This kind of kicks off our grocery drive as well. And some congregations use that opportunity to bring groceries. Not everybody does that, and that's okay. But kids are involved in doing that. Let me talk about physical needs just a second. We have a boy named Kobe that stayed with us for a while, not long ago. Little bitty kid, 11 years old, so skinny. He had to turn sideways in the shower just to get wet. He had been with us about 3 days, and we had breakfast at the church building. And he heaped him up a big pile of eggs, about this tall. He's about this big around. And he heaps this big pile of eggs and bacon and sausage and just devours it. And I'm watching him, and you know those little sleeves where you get your knife and fork and your little packet of salt and stuff? I watched him, and he kind of looked around, and nobody was looking, and he took some of those sausages and bacons and slid them in his sleeve and stuck them in his pocket. That's not uncommon in child care. But these kids, if they've been hungry, even though you fed them several days in a row, do not trust you. And it'll manifest itself in the fact that they'll hoard food, and they'll eat too much right at first. They always put on weight when they come home, but then they'll slipping it in your pocket and taking it to school is not uncommon because they're afraid they won't have food tomorrow. Let me tell you about Alicia. Alicia came to us at 12 years old, lived with her grandmother. Her mother had been in an accident, and was an invalid. So the grandmother was taking care of the mother, and little Alicia, she was 3 at the time. Just recently, the grandmother found out that she had cancer, and stage 4 cancer. She was very seriously ill. She put the mother in an institution because there was no one to care for her, brought Alicia to us. Alicia came carrying her luggage, which was a Walmart sack with 2 T-shirts in it. And we immediately, because school was the next day, made a flying trip to Walmart, a mere 45 minutes away, and bought her some emergency clothes, girl things that you got to have. She came out of the store and she said, "I have never in my entire life had anything brand new." She said, "This is the best day of my life." Since then, her grandmother has passed away. We are now, Alicia's basically her family, and this is where she lives and probably will stay until she gets out of high school. Let me show you the cottages. We talked about taking care of kids. This is cottage 4. I took that picture. It's first not because I can't count, but because the grass was green, and so I thought you might like to see one of the green grass. That's a girl's cottage. This is cottage 1. It's a boy's cottage. Cottage 2 is a relief. Cottage 3 is the other boy's cottage. On the other side of the gym, there's there'll be cottage 4 that you saw with the rock building, and then cottage 5 and cottage 6. 4, 5, and 6 are girls' cottages. In addition to providing food and shelter, we try to work with the social needs. This is Michelle. Michelle works on kind of a 3rd grade level. She's 18. As far as maturity level, that's about where she's at. But the blue ribbon she's holding there is for this picture that she drew with a pencil It is a recreation of a photograph. You would not believe the detail that went into that. She's very, very talented in the art department, and we're looking to find a place that can utilize those talents when she finishes high school. Our kids attend Cherokee Independent School District. We have an excellent student-to-teacher ratio. That's code for we are a very small school. Cherokee Home makes up about a quarter of the school with the 30 kids that we generally have out of 128. Do the math, that's about 25%. They're very dependent on us. We're very dependent on them. We also offer a lot of athletic opportunities. Someone asked me one time, they said, is this picture right here an old file picture? No. I didn't say we were any good at football. We just like to play it. It's been a while since we've been a runner-up for very much of the... In fact, there's half of the football team right there. We play six-man football. And so I teased my sister one time. I said, the first football game I went to, I said, this is the only place I've ever been where you go to a football game and both teams' colors are camouflage. We do have basketball for boys and girls, and they enjoy that a lot. We also, I mentioned the livestock shows. We did real well 2 years ago at the pig show. Last year we had kind of a little sickness go through our pen, and so we didn't do quite as well. We also have a state-ranked robotics team. They were 5th in the state, I believe, and it includes 5 of our children in the robotics team. We also have other activities. The woman on the far end and the man in the gray outfit are husband and wife. They live in Cherokee, and they are black belt Taekwondo instructors and former veterans and police officers. And they teach Taekwondo for free for our kids. Our kids just want to belong to somebody, somewhere, somehow, just be a part of the system. Let me tell you about Summer. Summer was a girl that was with us not long ago, and one of her friends was going home. She had been on community service. The judge had put her there, and so she had finished her community service and her time, and she hadn't gotten in any trouble, so she's going home. And we had a little party for her, and everybody could say anything they wanted to, and Summer got up and she said, I'm really, really glad, Leslie, that you're getting to go home. But for me, everybody that I have ever learned to love has left me, and now you're going too. What was interesting about that is I mentioned that our director died in an accident back in January. For a lot of our kids, that was just another person who said, I'm not going to leave you. And they did, even though it wasn't his fault. Working with kids in trauma is interesting that way. But here's the important thing. We take care of these physical and these social needs so that we can take care of the spiritual needs. That's our job. When it's all said and done, our concern is for the souls of these children and for their families. That's the important thing. But we have some of the kids, if they go to high school and finish, they are the first one in their family to ever finish high school. We had a guy one time said, I'm giving you scholarships for college, and nobody finishes college. And we said, I don't think you understand. Nobody here, or not nobody, because we've had lots of kids graduate from college, but a lot of these kids don't understand college because they don't understand finishing high school. You got to get them to the high school spot. But we are working very hard on the college program. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But the main thing is we're worried about their spiritual life. Jesus said, all authorities on heaven and earth has been given to me, and go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. That's what we try to do. We worship at the Cherokee Church of Christ. Really cool building, about 100 years old, and right in the heart of downtown Cherokee, Texas. This is Heart of Texas Camp. Our kids go there. It's in Brady, Texas. They call the Heart of Texas Camp HOT Camp. If you've ever been to Brady, Texas in June, you know why. It's more than just initials. It's HOT there. We also attend retreats and youth events. Our kids were in Mahia last weekend. My wife and I went as chaperones and went to a big youth event there. Important to get the kids anywhere but Cherokee is the way the kids say it. I want to go anywhere but Cherokee this weekend. And so to get them out and get them among other kids that are like them and have similar problems is a great deal. Find out that they're not weird. Find out that a lot of their problems or regular normal problems. This is one of our success stories. This is Robert Baugh. He's our spiritual life director at Cherokee Home. He's in charge of the spiritual life of the kids and the adults. He was a resident of Cherokee Home when he was 2 to 4 years old and stayed in one of the cottages, still remembers his house parents and has met with them several times since then. He went off. He was actually adoptable. He was adopted by a family. He went to college, was a standout player in college at Oklahoma Christian, came back, became a teacher and a coach, then a youth minister. Then we recruited him to come work for us. He is one of the great success stories of Cherokee Home. Now he is giving back. And when he tells those kids, when he's counseling them, I know how you feel, he knows how they feel. Big plans for 2012, transitional program for our high school students. A lot of places that keep kids, when they age out, as they call it, the term they use, when they age out, it's like prison, in the old days. They'd give you $20, a new suit, and call you a cab. We don't want to do that for our kids. We want to be sure that they have a direction to go. And we're working, I helped teach one of the classes the other day, talking about what does your landlord expect of you when you rent an apartment or a house? What's the number one reason for somebody getting kicked out of an apartment? How do you pay your bills when you've lost your job? And we try to get these kids to think about these things, and we're working to get them cell phones, driver's licenses, those things that they're going to need to be able to handle when they get out into the real world. Well, let's mention this real quick. So a lot of people say, what else can I do? My congregation supports Cherokee Home, but I have some means that I'd like to do more with. One of our biggest supporters at Cherokee Home, individual supporters, grew up in Dublin, Texas, and his mom and dad said, we want you to pick out a charity or some good work to support. We want you to start doing that. And he started at, 6 or 7 years old, giving to Cherokee Home. And now he's our number 3 supporter and is a graphic designer for Disney Corporation, and he lives in New York City. Tremendous story. Things you can do. Pray for our house parents and their families. It's the kids of our house parents put their lives pretty much on hold, and sometimes the other kids get precedent because the kids in trauma obviously are going to get the first look. So it's tough work. It is tough work. Pray for our staff and their families. I threatened my wife to put big red lights on the top of her car because I never know at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night if she has to go out to take care of an emergency, and I tell her I'm going to make it like a fire truck and get her one of those poles you can slide down and then jump in the car and take off. Oops, I missed one. And then, of course, pray for our children in our care. That is the most important thing. These kids are in trauma. It's the same kind of feeling that you have when you lose a loved one. I lost a wife in 2005. I understand the cycles of grief. I did a lot of studying about it. These kids go through the same cycles of grief as if someone had died in their family. And you would be surprised when you have a problem, you go back and look, and it's not about what they did here. It's about what happened over here. Stay in touch with us, CHC for Kids. Again, we're also on Facebook and Twitter. Lots of folks put Cherokee Home in their will, and that's certainly something that we would talk to you about. Delton, our executive director, is in charge of that. You may want to remember somebody with a memorial gift. Maybe you can't go to a service somewhere. It's awfully expensive to send flowers. Spend a lot of money and don't get a lot of flour for it. Doing something in the name of kids at risk in memory of someone is a beautiful thing to do. Come to our Cherokee Day, May 5th at our campus. Look around, enjoy the food and the fellowship, and see what all is going on there. Or you might want to sponsor one of the children. Esther right now is the one that is in charge of that. Or you may want to create a congregational or class project of some sort of thing, like purchasing phone cards for kids to call home, or adopting one of our cottages, or decorating a room there. Some folks have livestock, and they donate that. We're keeping kids in fresh meat, particularly 16, 17 high school boys. They could eat a herd of cattle if you'd let them. Maybe you're into 4-H and FFA. Help us with the projects. Great tool for teaching kids responsibility, and our kids excelled at it this year. Or maybe there's something you can do to volunteer, time or labor or materials that's applicable to you, or maybe have a machinery or vehicles that you could donate or buy. Or maybe you're thinking about a change in career. You think, man, that sounds like something I'd like to be a part of. We always are interested in folks who are interested in coming to Cherokee Home. It's a beautiful place. And it is secluded. If you don't mind driving 45 minutes to Walmart, it's a really cool place where you can help kids that are at risk. And then again, very important, if you know a child in your community or a family in your community that has kids that's having struggle, maybe they have financial problems or health problems and they cannot feed these kids properly and take care of them. Maybe they need a refuge from drugs or alcohol in their home. Or maybe they're on the edge of the law, or there's some abuse or neglect going on. We want to know about these kids. If we can help them, we will. If we can't help them, we'll try to. Because we're a basic care facility, sometimes we're limited at what we can do. But we will try to refer them to other places to help them get some help. That's very important to us as well. Jesus said in Matthew 25, he gave this, I guess you would call it an allegory. He said that the king says, "Come, you blessed of my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. A stranger, you invited me in. I needed clothes, you clothed me, and I was sick, you looked after me. I was in prison, and you visited me." And the righteous said, "Lord, when did we see you these ways?" And he says, "I tell you the truth, whatever you did to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me." So this is the reason we do what we do, because of what Jesus did for us. And to tell that story of Jesus to those who don't otherwise have opportunity. And we take full advantage of the opportunity to help children with food and clothing and shelter, with respect for authority, with schedules, with social life, so that with the intent purpose of creating soldiers in the Lord's army. Let me tell you one other story and we'll quit. A little girl named Kinley, she lives in Haskell, Texas. Her parents and grandparents have been supporters of Cherokee Home for Children. She's seen the presentations that we do at her church. She's been on the campus, seen the kids, and she's 6 years old. 6. She came to me one day. I saw her, and she opened her purse and got out her little purse, and she said, "Hold out your hand." And I held out my hand, and she shook out all the coins that were in there. Shook it again to be sure. And she said, "Would you give this money to those kids at Cherokee? I think they need it." Now, I don't think she knows at 6 years old what $1.87 will buy. But what I'm pretty sure she knows is that on that day, she did all she could do to help somebody that she thought had a very good need. And isn't that really all that God expects of us? To do what we can, when we can, for those who are in need. And He expects no more than what we have to offer, because He's the one that has given it to us. So we appreciate the opportunity to tell you about Cherokee Home. Cherokee Home is a mission, just as a missionary in a foreign field. We bring kids in. Most of them have never been to church. You think it's hard to take a 2-year-old that's visiting and that's never been to church in the Bible class and try to keep them calm. Try it with an 8-year-old or a 14-year-old who've never been in a controlled area except in school. And they don't know how to act. They don't know how to sit still. They don't know how to bow their heads when they pray because they've never been there. And just like we can't expect kids to graduate from college whose parents have never even been through high school, sometimes we have a tendency everyone who comes through Cherokee Home to become a Christian. Not always the case. However, we feel like if we lay that foundation work, and if we teach those that we can, and we baptize those who are willing, that we have changed the world a little bit at a time. There's a story about a guy walking along a beach, and he was picking up starfish. You know what starfish is? And they're live organisms. They look like a little star. And he was picking them up and throwing them out back in the water. And another fellow came by and he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm rescuing this starfish." And he threw it out there and he said, "Man, in the morning there'll be another 100 starfish right here in this little bitty area." He said, "You'll never save all of them." And he said, "You're right." And he picked one up and he said, "But I can save that one." And he threw it out in the water. One at a time, one child at a time, You take what the Lord gives you. You do the best that you can with them. If nothing else, they've seen a glimpse of what Jesus can do for them, and that is so very, very important. We appreciate the time here. Maybe you're here and there's something that's on your heart that you've needed to get right with the Lord. I would bet that this is a good time to have your brethren pray with you about that. And make that just as publicly known as is necessary. Take someone aside and say, I need you to pray with me. Or meet me up front here when we sing this song in just a minute. Or if today's the day you've decided to become a Christian, I'll bet that can be handled too. Jesus loves you just like he loves those kids, just like he loves the people that are in the field doing the work. And he wants all to come to repentance. He wants all to be saved. And that's our job and your job as well. If there's some way we can help you, won't you meet me up front as we stand and sing together?